This afternoon we're at Christ Church, Oxford, and we're so lucky to be with Richard here. Richard, you are the Subdean for the Cathedral.
That's right, yes.
Yeah, and we're really glad you made time for us. And it's been a fascinating visit. Part of the fascination for me has been to see how welcoming Christ Church is to visitors, to tourists, how much effort you make to really make them feel welcome. You personally even, taking the time to talk to the tourists, and when they're out of bounds, I love that you didn't correct them, that you're more their pastor than they were their policeman. You probably weren't even aware that you were doing that, but I appreciated it very much. But I want you to talk about two things to start with. The first thing is, both of them are about Christian formation. You've been so involved in the formation of young children. I wonder if you can talk about how our approaches to formation has changed for young people. And then I would love it if you could talk about just if there's anything that you're trying to do in terms of that mentality as you reach out to people who are tourists or visitors.
Yeah, so I suppose for me, hospitality is fundamental to the Christian life, making people feel at home, that they're not guests, they're not visitors, that they belong. We don't have a long mission statement, we don't have a long vision document. It's just two words, your cathedral. And it's your cathedral for everybody that comes. There isn't anybody for whom it's not their cathedral. And I think that's really at the base of everything that we try and do. And then I think in terms of teaching and learning, there are two things which I think are essential for me, are the stories of Jesus. What did Jesus say? What are the stories he told us that we can pass on to the next generation? And these are complex, difficult stories, like Grimm's fairy tales, which involve fire and water and flood and difficult things. And children really cope with that. And children will only cope with life if we teach them those stories. And then I think something that's really important for me personally is prayer is not difficult. We I think particularly as Anglicans have developed a culture of if I can be forgiven for saying this, spiritual constipation. That we kind of squeeze and squeeze and squeeze and hope to have a spiritual experience. But the New Testament isn't like that. The New Testament tells us that there are these overflowing gifts of joy and wonder and awe, and so just to help people to enjoy God and delight in God. And God wants us to enjoy Him and delight in Him. It's not difficult. It's not painful. The dark night of the soul might be for 0.1% of Christian people. I've got the simplest prayer life, that I've had since I was a child. And I don't want a complicated prayer life. I don't think God wants me to have a complicated prayer life. He just wants me to love Him and delight Him and enjoy Him. And I think that's what God wants for most people. And as far as I can see, that's what the New Testament wants for most people.
Well, I love we spent the afternoon together, and there's so many powerful moments. You told us so many extraordinary stories. But the chapel that you made in your basement is one of the most powerful, holiest places I've ever been. And even as we were coming out of there, I kept thinking about just like, what would you do to help someone like at Grace Cathedral or at another church to instill that sense of holiness, that sense of connection with God? Because you're so right. It's the simplest thing in the world is to talk to God, and we've made it complicated. But how do we create spaces that help move us in that direction?
And I'm very fortunate because I have a cellar in a large house, a 16th century house in the middle of Oxford. But you only need a corner of a room. And you only need a little corner. And, I've taught children how to make prayer spaces, somewhere that you put things that are special to you. And it might be a candle, a stick of incense, it might be an icon, it might be a leaf or a pebble that you found on the beach, a picture of your grandparents, your rabbit that's died, all of those things. And then using that little corner for this purpose, which is prayer and the sacred and the divine, and only using it for that, so that when you arrive in that space, your body, your mind is triggered into prayer. And I think that's really important, that we trigger our bodies into prayer and into holiness and in this sense of the divine. And we take all our good stuff and all our bad stuff to that corner and enjoy that corner. And I think you can do that in any size room, in any size house, in any place in the world. I used to travel a lot for my previous job, and hotel rooms, you can create this sacred space in the smallest possible area, and somehow, and I don't quite know how it works, God is present there in a particular way, an accessible to us in a particular way. Here in Oxford, we think sometimes about Philip Pullman's books,
Oh, right.
and
right.
you know, that knife that cuts into another reality.
Yeah.
I think that's what we're doing when we create sacred spaces.
Well, you know what I love about it? I love the idea of every human being going out and intentionally making the world sacred in their own way, through the help of God and through the help of the Spirit. And I came here expecting to hear wonderful stories about Alice in Wonderland and John Locke and Liddell, Henry George Liddell. And we heard those stories, but I think the most transformative thing was just for me to be with you as a person. You do an incredible job of communicating what it can be to live a spiritual life.
Well, that's very kind of you to say so. And we're in, we have the Shrine of St. Friedswald here, where people have prayed on that spot since 750, something like that. And I feel a really strong sense of the presence of all those people there. Sometimes when I'm praying there, it's almost like I'm crowded around the shrine. Yeah. And I often feel Friedswald's own presence, this strong woman who founded a community here, when it must, to do that in the 8th century as a woman, must have been unbelievably courageous. And I always feel her moving. She walks around the space, and she walks around the people that are gathered around the shrine. And so we're incredibly blessed to have that at the heart of our lives here. And I think that all that we can do is offer people, we need to say to people, crowd in, get closer,
yes, exactly.
Come closer. As Anglicans in our liturgy, we say, draw near.
Right.
Draw near. That's what we need to say. And in a sense, I don't think we need to say any more than that, because when they draw near, we have thousands of people every day who come as tourists, but many of them leave as pilgrims.
Yeah.
Because they've come near and they've sensed that presence, and they leave prayer here.
Yeah. Well, Richard, thank you so much for taking this time to be with us. I know you have to rush off to Evensong now, but Richard Pierce is the Subdean of the Cathedral in Oxford at Christ Church, and we're so grateful to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And I'm Malcolm Clemens Young, the Dean of Grace Cathedral in San Francisco, California. Thanks for watching More Good News.